How is DART different? Isn't it just another martial art?
I had a student that articulated this point very well. He said, you study an art, you learn a combative. And I take this back to the point when I was training. My two major instructors were both police officers. And so they taught me what worked for them in the context of a traditional martial art. The problem with that is exactly that. They taught me what worked for them. They were both bigger than I was. They were both stronger than I was. And so they would teach me a technique like an arm bar or a hip throw, and it wouldn't work for me because I was trying to throw 250 pounds or 230 pounds, or somebody who was 6'3" or 6'5". You know, these guys are significantly taller, and some of the things that they taught me worked, and some of them didn't. So as I worked through some of the things that they taught me, and I looked for the flaws that existed in what they taught me, I realized that to be truly a combative, it's got to work regardless of 5 different criteria. It has to work, it being the techniques or the whatever you're doing as a combative. It has to work regardless of size, height, weight, strength, or gender. So, for example, you have to have somebody who's 120 pounds and 5'6" be able to take out somebody who's 6'3" and 180 pounds, or 6'5" and 230 pounds. And those are the same situations that I found myself in. Very early in my training, when I didn't have all of this bulk, I walked into a martial arts class at 118 pounds and 5'6". Is it any wonder that some of the things that my instructors were teaching me didn't work? Well, at this point in my life, I'm a little bit stockier, but the point is the same conditions still have to apply. They have to work regardless of size, height, weight, strength, and gender, or we don't use it at all. It also has to work regardless of climatic conditions. So if it's cold outside and somebody's wearing a big puffy jacket, or if they're wearing multiple layers of clothes, you lose the effectiveness of your strikes if you don't use the right strikes in the right places. What if somebody's wearing a glove? Well, that makes it a lot more difficult to do a wrist lock or a wrist throw or a wrist manipulation of some sort. So not only does this have to work regardless of size, height, weight, strength, or gender, but it also has to work regardless of the situation you're in, the climate. What if somebody's wet in the rain, for example, or if it's dark outside? Not everything is so well lit that you have a perfect condition to execute a technique every time you need it. There's only so many different ways that you can handle a punch, a kick, a knife, a baton, in any of the different scenarios that you might be able to envision. So you can spend the next 4, 6, 8, or 20 years trying to figure out the best way to deal with those, or you can rely on the experience of other people. What I've done is I've consolidated 20 years of experience, and I only teach what works. The best thing about DART Combatives is that we're continually evolving. Anytime we find something that doesn't work, that doesn't meet the criteria that we're using, we replace it. If we can get somebody to show us why this doesn't work, and they have a good rationale, we throw it out. We only keep what works. The system's always evolving. It's always moving forward. I think the best thing about DART Combatives is that it's an evolutionary process. There's no ego. There's no tradition. It simply works or it doesn't.